Hey everyone, I know that sometimes students struggle with some of the basics on preparing a document, a report, or a progress report, or a proposal to make it look as professional and clean and as readable as possible. And so, what I want to do here is give you some real life tips from a real life report. This is a report that I did in 2024. So for those of you in the 2024 session, it's a report I finished just a few days ago. It's for an organization called Idaho Business for Education. It's a little longer than I would normally do, but it was written for the board of directors of this organization that includes most of the large businesses in the state of Idaho who support public education. And it was a report on a program that I worked in called Youth Apprenticeship. And so we wanted to give them and have available for anybody else a complete overview of the 4 years of that program. So I'm going to go through some things that I did to try to make that report more readable and more accessible to its audience. Now, I am not a design expert. I know a few tricks and a few ways to use Word and other mostly Microsoft 365 applications, but I also use other applications like Adobe and some Photoshop and those kinds of applications. But you don't need to be an expert. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you the information about a couple of places to go on YouTube where you can get really great hacks and tips on how to do anything you want to do in Word or Excel or other kinds of programs that will be useful to you in creating a better report, a better proposal, and ultimately useful for any other things that you'll be doing related to using software on your computer. So let's take a look. Here's the cover of my report. This is a picture that I took of one of the apprentices doing some auto mechanic work. I simply used a Word template to create this really basic cover, but it's nice and clean. It doesn't have a lot of unnecessary information. It gets right to the point. It has a nice image that reflects the content of the report, but I just applied a template from Word and then I inserted the rest of the information, including the image. So easy. Here's the first page of the report, and I want to just provide some specific information about how this is put together. So at the top of the page is the logo for Idaho Business for Education's Youth Apprenticeship Program. I actually took that off of a website, copied and pasted, put it here. It's just fine for this purpose. It has enough resolution. But a couple of things to note. When I inserted that image, I did it with, and you look at the left here, next to that Idaho Business for Education image. In Word, there is an option on Layout Options, and I chose Inline with Text, so it would stay above the text. It wouldn't wrap inside the text, regardless of the size. Now, in this case, the size is essentially all the way across the page, and so it would have stayed that way anyway. But if you want something to not wrap with the text or have text wrap around it, that's the one to use. Now, the image of the young woman who happens to be a member of a Native American tribe in northern Idaho, and she was the first Native American of her tribe to complete an apprenticeship, so it was a big deal. That one, if you look, I used with text wrapping, I used the tight text wrapping option so that regardless of where that image goes, the text will wrap around it. That gives it a nice clean look. There's no just kind of random white space. Finally, notice that I didn't write a paragraph here. I just introduced the first page with a bullet point summary in large type, and I even changed the type from black to blue, just again to enhance its accessibility for my audience. Okay, here's one of the few pages in this entire report, and I think it's 32 pages, that has no graphic or image elements in it. I wanted to do kind of the official executive summary. It's 4 paragraphs long. It gets down to the nitty-gritty, the basics. Then at the bottom in smaller type, I have an official definition of what apprenticeship is, what registered apprenticeship is from the U.S. Department of Labor. This kind of checks a box for, because they provided our grant, you need to give them credit, and so this checks that box, but it doesn't dominate the report or the page. One thing I want to note here, you're noticing hopefully that every page on this report has a page border on it. That is just really easy to do. You go into Word and you find the borders and shading options. So you go up to Home on Word, and then you'll have some options that will give you design options. You go to Borders and Shading, and you see here there's a page border option, and then there's the shadow option. That's what I've used here. I didn't make it myself. Now you can tweak it and make it larger or smaller, or you can put the shadow on the left side or the right side or above or below, but this is literally a 3-second process to get that page border on all of your pages. Okay, so here are the next 3 pages of this report, and there are a number of things I want to note here. One is that each of these pages has an image or a graphic of some kind, serving 2 purposes. One, it helps the reader kind of relax that they're not going to have to plow through a bunch of gray text, that there's something else for the eye to look at. Research going way back tells us that when people look at newspapers or video screens or whatever they're looking at, their eye is immediately drawn to first, images and graphics, second, larger type, and finally, smaller type. And so you want to mix this up and help the reader go from one thing to the next to then to where you want them to go without intimidating them. And so I've chosen on the page 3 here to use bullet points, but I included a map of where all of the sponsors for apprenticeship are located in the state of Idaho, just to provide some context, and immediately the reader can pick up on that. You'll note also that I didn't just write paragraphs again, I used bullet points. Also, I'll show you this in more detail later, but I've used a page break at the bottom of that page 3 so that the next page starts with a headline at the top, and I'll talk about that here a little bit more in just a minute. Notice also that I'm mixing up boldface, italics, and font sizes, not randomly, but to provide the reader some direction on where I want them to go. So on that page 4, when we get it down into kind of the details of the data, I've made it smaller. If someone wants to go in there and really dig in, it's there. But if they just want a quick summary and move on, then they can do that, and that's all they need to do. On page 4 here, you see this is an image that I edited to blur out the young people, the second graders in that, because I didn't have permission from their parents to use their images, but the apprentice is there because she gave me permission. You can see again, there's a combination of using larger text, numbered lists, and an image and a headline, all to try to help guide the reader through the presentation. Okay, we've skipped a few pages and I want to just make a couple of notes here. One is that on the left page here, it's page 9, this is where I've used a page break because I wanted to end a section or end what the reader thinks is a section and then start a new topic, a new idea with a fresh headline, and this space creates that sense that we're done with one thing and now we're going on to the next. The page break insert button is easy to find and easy to use. You can also create other kinds of breaks. You can create a section break, other things. Then I want to show you this this chart. That chart is a basic chart and it was made using Excel, and I'm going to talk about where you can go to learn how to make basic charts or even more exotic charts using Excel in just a moment. But it's not difficult, it's not intimidating, and you can go from, kind of ugly, lots of just numbers to more attractive and more easily consumed and understood information by using some of these techniques that are readily available in almost any platform you're going to be using. What I want to show you here is this is a section in which we just published some of the highlights of surveys that we did of our sponsors and our apprentices in the program. And I just picked a couple out to highlight with a shadow box. I like shadow boxes. You can see I'm using a shadow box for the page borders. What I think it does is it causes the type to sort of almost become 3D, to kind of move toward the reader. At the very least, it says, hey, there's something particularly interesting here that if you're not going to read the whole page, at least read this. And so I picked out two of what I thought were the most compelling responses from these surveys and just wrapped them in these shadow boxes. And again, you can go down to borders on Word, and if you're not using Word, there is some equivalent, and again, I'm going to show you where to go to get some additional help here in a moment. But it's easy and it makes an enormous difference, and these things don't take just hours and hours of time to do. They're very easy to do. So as you put your reports and proposals together, look for opportunities to enhance the accessibility for your audience. Here are a couple of pages toward the back of the report. In fact, I think the participating employers might be the last page. So this is, I guess, a 23-page report, not a 32-page report. But anyway, keys to success. Now this could have been, again, a 2-page paragraphs and sentences part of the report. I turned it into bullet points. So basically 5 major bullet points with some sub points and a really terrific picture. This is one of the apprentices who was a teacher's aide with one of his second grade students. It's a great shot. It immediately kind of, heartwarming. It attracts the eye and gives you something to look at. But then the information is done in a way where it's quickly and easily consumed, focusing on what matters most. Then on the last page, it was actually a requirement, we needed to include a list of all of the participating employers, but I didn't want to go on for page after page. And so I reduced the typeface, and then I used 3 columns. I turned that, I've been going with just one column across the entire page all the way through, but here, using Word, I just went into the layout section of Word, and I went to columns, and I covered the text, clicked on 3 columns, and it put it in that format for me. So again, simple. The information is there if the reader wants to dive into it, but it's not taking up big chunks of space, but it gets the job done. The last thing I want to talk about here is that there are so many resources, free resources available to you to learn some of these really basic ways to make huge improvements to your documents. Here are two, and it's just two of literally hundreds and hundreds, but Kevin Stratvert he's done, as you see, 916 videos. They're all free. They all tend to be very short and very focused on exactly what it is you're going to want to learn. So that goes from how to use Word to how to use Excel. He talks about how to create charts out of Excel. You can go in and search his channel and find exactly what you're looking for. He's really great. He's easy to follow. He provides a step-by-step on-video approach. There's another channel here called Technology for Teachers and Students. Very similar with a lot of the same information, how to use PowerPoint, basically it's how to use all the Microsoft Office 365 products. But he also has videos for, if you're an Apple user, he's got videos for Apple. So there is always somewhere to go, and what you need to do is decide what you want and need and find it. Do your own investigation. It's not hard. The internet is at your fingertips, and you can take what is otherwise a confusing or hard to access or hard to read report or progress report or proposal and turn it into something that looks more professional, is easier to read, conveys your information more effectively, and doesn't take hours and hours of extra time.